My favorite way to be able to bring in CAD drawing information into the Revit environment is to link that information into Revit. In order to do this, let's go ahead and create a drafting view, and then we will drop that linked information into Revit. So we'll come over here and we're going to go to the View tab, and we're going to create a new drafting view. For the name of this view, we're going to call this Linked Detail. The scale doesn't really matter. We could always change it after the fact if need be. So we'll just click on OK to that. Now this creates a new blank drafting view that we're going to link our CAD information into. So underneath the Insert tab on the ribbon, we're going to move down and we're going to select on Link CAD. For those of you that are already familiar with AutoCAD, this is the same concept as being able to bring an XREF into AutoCAD, except in this case, we're linking in this truss drawing into our Revit environment. Highlight on truss. We're going to move down here, and we have the choice between black and white, invert, or preserve our colors. Whenever I'm linking in my CAD stuff, usually I choose on preserve. I can always change the colors later if I wish, and by clicking on preserve, I can tell what is the native CAD information. Over here underneath positioning, there's an option here for auto center to center or auto origin to origin. We'll just leave it at center to center since we're dropping this into a drafting view. And click on open. When you do that, we can zoom in here. We can see our CAD content. And if we select on this particular thing that just got inserted in, one of the things we'll notice is up here on the ribbon, there is an option here for delete layers. So if for some reason we didn't want to see things like the text, we could select on delete layers, click on this checkbox right here for text, hit OK, and then suddenly none of the text would be there anymore. The advantage to being able to do this is the fact that if we'd been able to bring this in and then hit this button right here that says explode, which is currently grayed out, then everything would have been an individual piece inside of this particular view. And it would have been very difficult for us to be able to come in here, clean it up, and make changes to everything that we needed to be able to make changes to. So as a result of that, by just deleting the layers, we can kind of get this CAD drawing to such a state that maybe we can note it, draw over the top of it without having individual pieces or lines. That being said, if you link in a CAD drawing file as opposed to importing in a CAD drawing file, you're never going to have the actual ability to hit the explode command. It's just always going to be grayed out for you. But the reason why I bring that up is if we happen to have inserted this in, then it would have automatically increased the size of our Revit drawing file. At its surface, when you think about how big a AutoCAD file is and you insert it in, that doesn't seem like such a big deal. But if you insert in 50 or 60 of them, you can guess how much tremendously bigger your Revit drawing file size could become. By linking this in, it doesn't actually add any size, any megabytes to the Revit file size. So as a result of that, your drawing and your model performance isn't going to really be affected by linking these things in. Now, another thing that I like about being able to link these in as opposed to importing these in is the fact that even though I can't select on an individual line and be able to make modifications directly to it, I can draft directly over the top of this kind of environment. So when I say that, what it means is that if I come in here to my annotate tools, and then I move over here toward the middle and select on detail line, I then have all my typical line tools, which technically would snap to the endpoints, midpoints, just like they would if this had been a Revit line work in Revit entities. But also there's this option here for pick lines. And if we check on pick lines, we can come over here to where it has line styles and pick a different line style off of the list. In this case, I'm going to pick on wide lines just so we can see it. I know this is going to be overbearing when we look at it. And then I'm going to select on one of these individual lines. By doing this, you can see that we can kind of just play a tracing game around everything inside of this model. Obviously, these lines are a little bit too heavy, so I'm going to change this from being wide lines to perhaps a medium line, and then click here. And the advantage is what we're using here is that this is not AutoCAD lines that we're using, that we're drawing in. We're drawing Revit lines right over the top of this. And what that means is after we've actually come in here, selected each of these individual lines, retraced everything that we see here in the view, it means we can finally select on this and then delete it. And when we do, all we would have left would be our AutoCAD line work or AutoCAD detail information. The advantage of that being is if we decided to make changes to the AutoCAD information, it wouldn't update inside of Revit. If we decided to move the AutoCAD information to a different directory, or we needed to save and move this Revit information to another location, then we wouldn't have to worry about it losing its link with the CAD information because we've redrawn it inside of this particular Revit detail. One other nice thing about going through this process and placing this inside of a drafting view inside of Revit is the fact that drafting views can be saved out. So as a result of that, if we wanted to be able to save this drafting view out as a drawing file, we absolutely could. So in order to be able to do that, I'm going to come down here to the drafting views. I'm going to right click, and then I'm just going to right click right here on the name. And you can see that by clicking on Save to New File, if I'd click on that, it's going to ask, what name do you want to be able to give this? And at this point, you could give it any name that you wanted to, save it in your library of different details, and then you could reuse this Revit detail again and again and again in future projects without having to leverage that CAD information anymore. So it's important to remember that by linking in your CAD data, you can quickly recreate your details in Revit without permanently introducing that AutoCAD information into your projects.